Let me start by mentioning quickly what it is that we have to be concerned about in defining the future we want. Well, this is something that's taken out of the document that came from Rio+20. We recognize that there is a need for global integrated and scientifically based information on sustainable development. And I think it's critically important that knowledge and information should be the drivers of action. And here may I quote Einstein when he said, problems can't be solved at the level of awareness that created them. So I think we need to go far beyond, and I think we have with us the knowledge that is needed. We also recognize that fundamental changes in the way societies consume and produce are indispensable for achieving global sustainable development. And I think the key word over here is fundamental changes. I think we have to bring about a transformation, and this is where policies, actions, and certainly changes in human behavior would have an extremely important part to play. Another important paragraph from there was that countries reaffirm the commitments that they have made to phase out harmful and inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that encourage wasteful consumption and undermine sustainable development. Subsidies of all forms need to be looked at, but clearly those that have major negative externalities, as is the case with the burning of fossil fuels, need to be assessed very carefully. And it said, we acknowledge that green economy in the context of sustainable development and poverty eradication will enhance our ability to manage natural resources sustainably and with lower negative environmental impacts, increase resource efficiency, and reduce waste. So this is the key part of the theme that we have in this summit. So with this, let me give you a very quick overview of some facts which I referred to in the opening session. This is a study that was commissioned by UNIDO and was carried out by two institutes, TERI, the Solar Energy Research Institute, and the Wuppertal Institute. And as you can see over here, Asia has been growing very rapidly in terms of total resource extraction. This, to a large extent, is expected because growth in Asia has been much faster than the rest of the world. But this also poses a disproportionately large challenge for Asia, because if we continue on the same path, then clearly we are going to impact on the global environment. We're certainly going to impact on the accessibility of resources. And therefore, I think this movement must start in Asia towards a more resource-efficient pattern of development. And this gives you the picture of how changes have taken place for key resources, right from biomass, which, as you can see, has grown, not quite as rapidly as some of the other resources, but certainly all of these need some attention to bring about changes that ensure efficiency in the use of resources. Here, this is another set of numbers which is important: material consumption and CO2 emissions. There's clearly a relationship, not entirely uniform or monolithic, as you would see in different countries of the world. But certainly, if you were to look at the trend, which links material consumption with CO2 emissions, there is a clear pattern over there. However, the real opportunity is for countries that are at the lower end of this graph to see that they remain on a lower trajectory than what you have. Now, China, of course, is an outlier, but I do realize that China is now making major efforts to reduce its resource use intensity. In fact, I might mention that TERI is working on a project with China in looking at low carbon development between the two countries, China and India. And I think this will be an extremely significant study which will have implications not only for our two countries, but for the rest of the world. Here's another look at how this relationship appears if you take per capita values. And here again, you would see this is, of course, just a select group of countries, but the disparities and also some of the commonalities become quite clear over here, which I hope will get further discussion in the sessions that are to follow. And therefore, I just wanted to present to you the fact that there are relationships which have been largely rigid in the past, linking economic growth, economic activities with the use of resources of various kinds. But the challenge now really is to come up with innovative policies, technologies, and actions that somehow break this link, which has been rigid and quite uniform in several respects. And I think there are countries like the emerging markets, which are still somewhat early in the stages of development, where the opportunities are substantially larger than those that exist in the developed countries. But it is also important to point out that the developed countries have to make efforts by which they reduce their resource use efficiency. And I think, as the Honorable Prime Minister said in the inaugural session, we really need a coordinated approach across the globe to be able to manage and deal with some of these challenges in the future. So this is just a very brief sort of overview of the kind of challenge that we face in this context, and I'm sure you're waiting to listen to the distinguished leaders who are going to be speaking in this session. So I'll now turn it over to the chairman of the session, and I'm sure he would conduct the proceedings from here onwards.